welcome to this episode of Authentic Achievements, where I am delighted to be joined by the fabulous Kerry Jones. Kerry, welcome.
Thank you so much.
I'm so looking forward to this conversation. But before we get stuck in, let me introduce you more properly to our audience. So Kerry's an executive and career development coach with more than 16 years of senior experience in the corporate world. As a coach, she's been instrumental in helping ambitious professionals rediscover their focus and confidence, enabling them to successfully build their careers and their businesses. Whether you're wanting to take your business to the next level, developing your role, or simply looking for accountability and encouragement, working with Kerry will inspire and challenge you to grow. Kerry holds accreditations as a coach from the International Coaching Federation, the Institute of Leadership and Management, and ABNLP. In addition to offering one-to-one private coaching, she collaborates with organisations to provide coaching services for their employees. And Kerry's services also include group coaching, speaking engagements, and webinars. Kerry lives living near the beach in Brighton with her husband and two amazing kids who've got it all going on, my lovely, haven't you? So it's so lovely to have you here. But can we start by you telling us a little bit about your journey so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you read out in my bio. So my background is corporate. So I've been working in Canary Wharf for about 16 years. I worked in marketing communications roles. So I headed up communications functions. My last of those was head of comms for Barclays Wealth Management. And then I left the corporate world, having worked my way up the ladder. I left about 10 years ago when my youngest was born. I was a full-time stay-at-home mum for a while, which I absolutely loved. And then when my second one came along, I decided to start my own business. So I ran my own marketing agency for a few years and then realized it really wasn't what I wanted to do. So I retrained and became accredited as a coach. And I have been running my own coaching practice for nearly 4 years now.
Wow. It's amazing that we seem to have orbited around each other, because I equally worked for Barclays Wealth.
Oh, really?
And then retrained as a coach later on after giving up corporate life. I think sometimes you find your way back to your passion, don't you? And the thing where you feel that you can add the most value. So what is your purpose? What's your drive?
Yeah, I mean, I get asked this a lot, but the reason that I decided to move into coaching was I recognized when I was in corporate, and as I worked my way up the ladder, it was a pretty lonely place. You know, I really struggled. Although, you know, I was doing well and my career was going in the right direction, I really struggled with a number of things that I felt I had nobody that I could speak to about, nobody that I could really trust. I didn't know if the way that I was thinking and feeling about things was normal, because people don't really talk about it when they get to a senior level. And so a lot of my passion, a lot of the work that I do now is giving people a space to be honest, to feel safe, that they can share some of the challenges that they are struggling with in their careers, if they're in business or if they run their own business themselves. Obviously, I do that as well. Give them an opportunity to explore those, to be honest, to be vulnerable, but also to figure out what to do next. And I think that is something that I would have valued so much in my corporate years and in my early years, and also my early years of building my business. And it's an absolute privilege that I'm able to provide that for other people.
Oh, that so resonates. And I know when I was going through corporate life, it didn't matter how many accolades or how high up you went. What you tell yourself in your head can be the total opposite. And actually having somebody like you where you can have a safe space to say it out loud and therefore look at it and understand it better. Sometimes when you say it, it just makes you hear for yourself that makes no sense and that there's probably something else. So what would you say so far has been your biggest lesson?
I think there's a couple of big lessons. If I look back over the last sort of 10 or 20 years, I think the first big lesson that I've learned from kind of, transitioning from, corporate to running my own business, then to transition into another business, is that you don't always have to do something just because you're really good at it. There's almost like a guilt factor of feeling unhappy in something when you should be really happy because you're really good and everyone thinks you're doing great. And, some people would absolutely love your job but for me, I realized that I wasn't happy doing what I was doing. And I wish that someone had sort of said to me, it's okay to move on from something. Even if you're good at it, it's okay to move on and do something different. So that's something that I've learned, that it's okay to keep moving or keep trying new things and until you find really resonates. I suppose the other thing that I've learned, again, wish someone had told me, was that for me, I will get somewhere quicker and easier if I've got the right support structure around me. So I am maybe less so now, but used to be very independent. I can figure this out. I'm an intelligent woman. I must be able to do this. And didn't necessarily ask for the right support. And I wish, with hindsight, I think if I had done, I would have got where I wanted to go quicker and, more importantly, easier.
I love that. Such great advice, because I think often we are really bad at asking for support and help, and we do keep doing things longer than they bring us joy, just because we know we can and they can add value. One of the things I've always been really bad at is asking for help, not necessarily from an over independence point of view, but from not wanting to add to anybody else's already busy day. So I would just add, but actually, and somebody told me this and it really resonated. So I'd love to share it with you, see if it resonates with you. So he said to me, do you ever feel like that when somebody asks for your help? And I said, no. And I said, I'm just grateful that I can help. And it makes me feel good that I was able to move them forward. And so actually, by not asking for support, you're denying somebody else that feeling. I was like, what of that?
That's so true. I think the other thing is that we don't always know what kind of support we need.
Yeah.
Like if I look back, I didn't really know that I would probably really benefit working with a coach. Things like training and development and all the sort of things that are available in corporate life. That was all that I knew was there. I didn't even realize that there was a whole kind of other avenues that I could explore. You don't know what you don't know, as I say. So I think that's the other thing. People don't know what type of support they need, even if they know they need something.
That's so true. It's hard, isn't it, to navigate, particularly because everything's so busy right now. There's so much information coming at us that it's hard, isn't it, to sift through and find the bit that's actually going to resonate.
Yeah, it does. And it can take a bit of time. And I think that mostly people find coaches in particular, I don't know if you find this to be true, through recommendations. So, but in order to be able to even have those conversations, there has to be a touch of vulnerability from somebody to say, oh, do you happen to know of anybody? Or this is the sort of thing I'm struggling with. Have you struggled with this before? Giving people an opportunity to go, well, yeah, actually, have you thought about, working with a coach or exploring these different avenues?
Yeah, because we do have to, and actually it also takes some vulnerability on behalf of the person who's being coached to open up to the people that they know that they're using a coach. Because I know, I don't know if it's the same, when you're in corporate life, but almost just for many years, having a coach felt like you weren't doing good enough because you needed somebody to support you, as opposed to actually it being the additional support that's going to be the catalyst to get you through to the next stage and the ones beyond that.
And then you hear that all the senior team have coaches, and then you're like, oh, okay, well, they seem to be doing all right. And it's not because they're not achieving. I think they used to be. I'm not sure if there is such a stigma these days. There used to be a real science stigma around kind of using coaches because of underperformance or whatever. But I think now that culturally it's changed a little bit, and people recognize that investing in themselves is really important. And, obviously investing in a coach is one of the ways that people can do that. And, most senior leaders, most senior teams will have a coach of some kind, so I don't think it's as unusual perhaps now as it used to be.
No, I think you're right. I think that the whole world's evolving on this. And we know that, every top athlete, actor, business person, politician, you name it, everybody at the top of their game has at least one, if not many, coaches in their support structure, because of that acknowledgement of the need to have somebody who can give you that safe space to be vulnerable and really explore and understand what's going on, why you're thinking what you're thinking, what the options can be, and allow you to find the path that works for you, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's why so many people, when they start coaching, never want to stop. They're like, oh, it's brilliant. I never knew this service existed. I know most of my clients, pretty much all of them, will want to renew because they're like, I just didn't even realize that this was available to me. And, almost like when you get a taste of something, you're like, yeah, I can see why this is going to be really good for me.
Yeah, that is so true. So what would you say has been your proudest achievement so far?
Well, I think I can never think of one. I think my proudest achievement has probably been a mum, if I'm honest, and a non-worky one. So I have two gorgeous kids. One's 8 and one is 10, so years 3 and year 6. And I am so proud of my kids. They're just amazing. They bring such joy. They're wonderful little people. And I'm really proud of them. I think they're probably my biggest achievement. I think connected to them is I'm proud of the fact that I've been able to step away from a corporate life and a life that I knew wasn't making me happy. It wasn't enabling me to, be a present mum, to be able to be the mum I wanted to be, and build my own business. So to be able to build around our family structure something that worked for me personally, but also that worked for us as a family. I'm really proud of that. And, it's not perfect. And they're still very little, and I'm sure it'll evolve as time goes on. But stepping away from a lucrative career isn't always easy, and I look back, I'm not even sure how I really did it. Maybe it's all the hormones, the baby hormones at the time. But I'm really proud of that, and I love what I do, which I think it makes a big difference. I love being able to help so many people. And there's I'm sure you get the same. There's a real sense of achievement being a coach. You know that you're really helping people. You're really impacting people. You're sharing your life with people, and you know that you're making a big impact on how their lives are going to turn out as well.
Yeah, it is one of the greatest gifts. And I must admit, my little girl is my North Star. She's 7. So just slightly, just like you had yours in year 2. And actually, I find myself the same, inadvertently coaching her constantly. And I spot her using some of those coaching techniques. I'm like, oh my goodness, I've set off like the youngest coach into the classroom.
That's so true. My eldest is often coaches my youngest and uses the same terminology that I use. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what have I done?
It's funny, isn't it, when you hear your words played back through your children. But I think that's when we see the real impact of having that support. I watch her and she'll coach her little friends, and then you see them resolving things that previously had been a massive problem, and you're like, that's how I feel when I resolve things. She goes like, she's so proud of herself because she was able to help. And I think it's those gifts, isn't it, about how to get people to see beyond just the challenge that they're in right now. And I agree. I think the fact that you were able to move from that corporate life and invest in doing something that brings you joy is also a great gift for your children, because it shows them. I often think children don't learn by what we say and what they do. They learn by how we are, what we are, and how we show up in the world. So if we're saying one thing and doing something else, like do the thing that brings you joy, and then you're dragging yourself into something that doesn't bring you joy, then that causes a conflict, doesn't it, for them in their growth?
Yeah, no, definitely. We talk a lot in our house about gratitude and being present, and always trying to flipping mindset. My kids are learning lots at school about growth and fixed mindset. It's become quite natural to us, I suppose. Maybe that's my influence, probably is more so than my husband's. But I just think it's such important life lessons for them, to be able to, like you say, not just see the problem that's right in front of them, but to see the bigger picture, but also to acknowledge that they have choices that they can make. They can choose how they think and feel about those situations, just like we can as adults. They might not be able to impact the outcome. They might not get to choose not to go to school, but they can certainly choose their mindset around how they're going to feel about it and how they're going to show up. And it's really similar lessons, isn't it, when we're talking to clients as well, and things that we're trying to encourage them of, what's in your control, what's not in your control, what can you control. I'm hoping, I'm sure they're going to turn out all right. At the moment, it looks like they will.
I'm sure they will. And you're also teaching them around that being constantly curious, like, to be open-minded. The bit I love when you look at really little children is they are just curious about everything. and they've got such wonder in the world, and we kind of lose it a little bit, don't we, to get older, and we need to instead have the answer, or not be seen to not have an answer, rather than just being curious like that. Like, why are we doing this? Why does that look like that? And how do we view things with that wonder that they bring? I often sit back and reflect on how Scarlett's observed a situation, and seen things in it I've not seen, because I'm so used to the situation that you're like, you just, it becomes hidden in plain sight, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I'm certainly finding that with my two as well.
So one of the things before we came on, when we were chatting on LinkedIn, was really around, and we've touched on it slightly, and those feelings around imposter syndrome, and where people can be their own biggest critic, and it's quite prevalent, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that I struggled with when I was in corporate. I still struggle with now, if I'm honest. Being a business owner isn't an easy ride always, is it? So I think particularly in corporate, I didn't realize that it was a thing. Like, I don't think I ever heard people talk about imposter syndrome, or even that people were particularly struggling. I certainly was in the culture where people talk much about their feelings or things that they were struggling with. And I think for me, imposter syndrome showed up a lot more the higher up the corporate ladder I got. So, you notice that, you're being called into CEO's office, and you're presenting to the exec team of Barclays, and, these things that actually I was fine doing. I was able to hold my own and I did a good job, but the inner critic obviously has a field day. What are you doing here? Who do you think you are doing this? They're not going to listen to what they say. They're going to dismiss you. What if it all goes wrong? I mean, it's incessant, isn't it? If you actually listen to it. And I think over time, I didn't really have any tools or techniques of what to do with that. I just thought that it was me. And I think for me, a lot of my inner critic came because I was almost like the first like trailblazer in my family. I didn't come from a particularly academic or professional kind of family, as it were, and so there was always that "who do you think you are" kind of voice that I struggled with when I was younger, and I think some of that does carry across into coaching. We still have those. I do find myself comparing myself to other coaches, look how wonderful or successful this one is, or this one, or look what they're doing, and maybe I should do, but the difference is now I can recognize what's going on. I'm pretty good at telling that critic to be quiet. And I can kind of understand a lot more that this is really normal. This is just this is just what successful or any kind of, person does when they're struggling with things that are uncomfortable or unknown. So, and I think imposter syndrome, like, it shows up in so many of my clients. Pretty much all my clients are senior in their field. I coach a lot of partners and associates at law firms and directors within companies, and most of them, they might not call it imposter syndrome because they're not educated around, but exactly the same, the same kind of inner critic that comes up, the lack of confidence, the wobbles of self-belief. Of course it does. It's it's not, it happens to all of us. And the trick is just, well, there isn't really a trick, but there's such power in recognizing that it's normal. Something wrong with you. But also just learning a few of those kind of quieter things that can, quieten the voice, so you can just crack on with your day without being sort of taunted by it.
Yeah, it's so true. It's finding those almost a strategist to reframe in the minute, isn't it? I remember having horrendous imposter syndrome all the time I was in corporate life, and it is, as you say, it's incessant what we say to ourselves, and it sounds so plausible. It's like we say, it sounds so plausible, and we say things to ourselves that we would never say to another living person. We're so mean to ourselves in kind of how critical we can be, and I think it is one of those where working with somebody so that you can get some strategies to go, in this moment, how do I regain control over the conversation in my head, so that actually I'm able to move forward. And I sometimes wonder whether it's more around those it's kind of, I think we live everywhere on a spectrum, but there's kind of like a confidence spectrum, and I think sometimes we swing over here where our belief is less than our ability, and that's when we start to have that doubt. What we really want to try and do is live in the middle, where our belief and our ability are in complete alignment, but it's hard to stay in that space. So it's being kind to yourself as well, isn't it, and acknowledging that there will be a situation or a day that crops up and you suddenly tell yourself something awful again. It's like, okay, I can catch myself in that, and I can reframe that and see how best I want to move forward.
And a lot of it for me, it's been around like just knowing who I am, you know, like knowing, actually taking the time, you know, over time and coaching and whatever, to actually figure out who I am, what I'm good at, what I'm not so good at, you know, understand my own limitations, and have a deeper sense of self-awareness. Because then when that inner critic starts having a good old go, you can kind of go, well, that's not actually true. Like, I know myself, I know who I am, I know what I'm good at, but I also know who I am as a person. And that's just not true. It's that kind of evidence-based thing, isn't it? Sometimes, you know, we use with clients and we go, well, what evidence do you have for that belief? You know, what's happened in that has caused you to come to that conclusion? And often, you know, clients are like, well, actually, I don't have any evidence. You know, it is almost a lie, some of the things that we tell ourselves, because there isn't any evidence for them. So I've found that deeply helpful. I mean, some of that is obviously maturity, isn't it? And getting older, to know ourselves a bit better. And I also, you know, sort of say to clients, it's really important that you do have things like folders of achievements, and you do have, you know, to hand testimonials from clients or from stakeholders. And, you know, when you can't think of anything positive, or if everything's going pear-shaped, you do have some evidence to the contrary. I don't know about you. Do you have a feedback folder? So
one of my friends introduced me to the Big Me Up book. She has which I now have and carry around, a little notebook that you can take anywhere, where you write in what people have said or things that you've achieved, so that you can quickly flick through it in those moments, because they never come at the right time to do it. If I was home in my office right now, I could turn around and I could get to that folder. So she introduced me to that, which I love, and I share with clients, because it kind of builds also onto those folders of achievement, because you do need to acknowledge. And I guess for me, one of the other things that really helped me when I was going through it was I suddenly realized that inadvertently I was making my opinion that I wasn't very good and I was incapable and I was going to get found out more valid and more credible than the opinions of people I aspired to be like. So these people were telling me, you're really good at this. They were giving me awards and things. And I was going, if only you knew what I knew, you wouldn't be doing this. And I suddenly stopped myself and went, so do you really think your opinion is of more value than theirs? And I was like, well, no, because I don't really value my opinion at all. In here, telling myself how rubbish I am. And so I started to do a piece where I was like, do you know what? I'm going to borrow their opinion, and I'm going to do my level best to not let them down. So if they believe I can do it, I'm going to borrow their belief, and then I'm going to try really hard to make sure I don't let them down. And it was amazing how much that was able to change. And I do that now. I did with my little girl actually last week. She came home and she was like, Mummy, I can't do this maths and I'm rubbish at it and I'm never going to be good at it. And I was like, okay, let's just for a minute sit with Mummy and let's just do a belief thing. So I sat on Mummy looking at me, and I was like, look in Mummy's eyes. First thing I need to ask you is, do you trust me? And she was like, yes, Mummy. I said, have I ever lied to you? She was like, no, Mummy. I said, okay, bear that in mind. I believe you can do it. I absolutely know you can do it. So if you don't believe, borrow my belief. I said, I'm going to say it until you tell me the belief's in. So we probably went through it 3 or 4 times. And then she was like, Mummy, the belief's in. I said, okay, try your maths. And she nailed it. She absolutely nailed it. So now she comes up occasionally and she's like, Mummy, can we do that belief thing again? I've got my homework to do.
I love that. Do you know what I could have done with that last night? So I was having a really similar conversation with my eldest, who's trying to learn her lines for the school play thing. she's like, I can't do it. It's like, okay, let's stop. We're in the car actually on the way to gymnastics. Like, okay, she was trying to learn them in the passenger seat. I was like, okay, well, let's just reframe this. Let's look at positive mindset. And we talked, very similar, but I love your idea. I might try that with her about sort of borrowing my belief in her to see whether that changes things. Yeah.
I just think it came to me from, when you look at, if you woke up tomorrow and I said, tomorrow you're going to wake up and you're going to have to learn how to walk or talk or run or jump or skip, you'd be overwhelmed. We all would. And yet at our most vulnerable, when we couldn't do anything else for ourselves, we learned to do them. And so I started really looking at it and going, why is that? How do we do it? And I think it comes down to belief in two parts. The first is kids believe they're just like you. You can do it, so they can do it. They've got no filter of how difficult or complicated it is. But second, I've yet to see a child learn to walk that doesn't have at least one adult nearby going, come on, you've got this. You're so close. So we give them our belief to add to their own. And for me, that has been one of the things that kind of I'm working on with Scarlett and with clients is, if in times where you need some extra belief, borrow mine. Because I won't tell you I believe in you if I don't believe in you. I'm not going to lie to you. But if I do, borrow it, because that might just give you the extra energy push you need to get you through the other side.
Absolutely. And when I think back to like the sort of advice I would have given a younger me, it would have been a lot of that. It would have been like, surround yourself, Kerry, with people who believe in you. Surround yourself with people who have that vibe of like, you can achieve anything. And even if you don't believe it, I believe it for you. And, and having a network or a support structure of that kind of people around you is so important. Like I've realized that now as I'm older. Oh my goodness, a younger Kerry would have absolutely benefited from that as well.
Oh, I love that. That's great. That's great advice. You preempted my next question. You're fine. Which is like, what do you know now that you'd go back and love to do earlier? And I love that piece around making sure that you're surrounded by the right support and the right infrastructure to be able to get you through.
And you know what? And sometimes it doesn't even have to be people. It's things like, being really mindful of what you're listening to, what podcasts you're listening to, what kind of books that you're reading. I didn't even realize that, how much of our mind is affected by those sorts of things. All the things you watch on TV, and I think also that I was, that would have been really helpful to me because I was, as I say, kind of brought up with fairly low expectations of what I could achieve in life. And I wasn't surrounded by anybody apart from my history teacher at school who told me, Kerry, you can go to college, you'll be able to go to university. And I was like, but his belief in me then meant I did go to college and I did go to university, and the rest is history. But just having people around you who believe in you, who would cheer you on, even when you can't see it yourself, even when you can't believe it yourself, is just so valuable. And that's one of the things we do, I know, as coaches, isn't it? We make sure, obviously we're trying to help our clients have belief in themselves, but sometimes they do borrow a little, I'm sure inadvertently borrow a little bit of our faith and our belief in them as well.
I love that. And I think we do. A friend of mine calls it having your Thrive Hive. So having the people around you that are going to help you thrive, and that have they have their different parts to play. I've got somebody in mind who is the person who's going to give you the kick in the pants that you need, when you need to just move forward. But I've also got the person that's going to sugar the pill for me when I'm not quite ready for tough love. I'd like those. But the bit is, I know all of them have got my best interests at heart, and I love that. I could literally chat to you all day, but I'm very conscious of time. So how can people get in touch with you? I mean, obviously we'll have it all in the show notes, but how best do they get to speak to you?
Come and find me over on LinkedIn. So I spend quite a bit of time there. Come and connect with me on LinkedIn. That's always good. Obviously, my website is below. There's some free resources on there, particularly around imposter syndrome. Under the free resource section, there's a workbook and some videos. If that's helpful, then download those, have a little look at those. But come and connect with me there.
Fabulous. Kerry, it's been an absolute delight. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing such invaluable insight.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Until next time.